So this video here is not one where I'm reacting to a video or anything or, something on the news. This is just something that happened in my life. I had previous videos up about it, but I just wanted to retell the story again and make it, a little bit better. And it's the story about how my wife saved me financially by forcing me to budget. There was a time in my life where I was not concerned about budgeting at all. The job that I was working, it just didn't allow me to be able to save enough to budget. And really, I wasn't even in the mindset, to be honest with you. But, what happens when a man gets married? If he marries a good woman, she makes him better. So I changed, and buddy, I tell you, I look back and I am a happy man. So what I'm going to do for this video, I'm going to break down 4 ways that my life was made better because my wife forced me to have a budget. And before I get into those reasons, why am I saying she forced me? She forced me because month after month, she kept coming to me, Richard, you need to make a budget. I would not listen. I would get defensive, and it just wasn't a good idea. And she went one time, took my computer, said, hey, I'll make one for you. You just need to see. And once I acquiesced, because men, that will bring a lot of peace to your household when you know what to fight for and what not to fight for. When I acquiesced, my eyes were open and I saw the benefits. So let's get into the very first reason why this was beneficial to me and how my life got much better after I let my wife save me financially by forcing me to make a budget. First reason, I can focus on life with far less stress. Now, why do I say that? Because she made me make a budget, I was able to become debt free. I made a budget. I was able to get some other good things to happen in my life. And then before I knew it, because my mind was already focused on having a budget, I was able to get completely out of debt. And that released me from so much stress. In fact, just a quick story about that, and kind of the trauma of a layoff. There was a time where both myself and my wife, we worked for a particular organization in the government. And it was funny because my grandma and my grandpa actually worked for that same sector of the government. And I saw them work and retire from there. So when my wife got a job there and then I got a job there, I was so happy because I was like, man, I'll never have to deal with another job interview. I'll never have to look for another job. I can just stay here and I can retire. Well, that's not how that went. I'll never forget the day I was on the phone with my wife and she got the email, hey, you got to bring and report your stuff and turn it in tomorrow. And so my mind, I go, oh man, it's going to be a 1-income household. I got to make sure everything's all right. And then before I know it, boom, I get the exact same email. I got to turn my stuff in too. We're both laid off. But the way we made it through that was because my wife had forced me to budget. We had a small emergency fund saved up. I had about 3 months of rent. Well, not rent, of mortgage. And that saved us through that time. And I tell you, my stress after I was able to get another job, my stress went down so much because having that budgeting mindset. I got another job. I was able to find some other ways, some good ways to be able to come into a large sum of money. And instead of taking that money and going on big trips or doing whatever, I took it, paid off all my debt, and now continuing to have far less stress in my life because of that skill of budgeting that my wife gave me. Okay, that was a big explanation of reason 1. Let's go ahead and move to reason 2 as to why I am so happy my wife forced me to have a budget. And that is, I built a healthy emergency fund. I kind of leaned into that with my story about us getting laid off, but I tell you, that really, really helped us. It really helped us to be able to have those emergency funds set aside to be able to take care of the bills while we were looking for jobs. And that situation, my wife, she ended up going back to the government. I ended up getting another job. I am thankful for my job. She is thankful for her job. And now we're both debt free, and we're both continuing to add to our respective emergency funds. This is such a key thing, because just because you get out of debt, just because you know how to budget, if you don't use that extra money wisely, then it will all be for nothing. So, hey, I tell you, building a 6 to 12 month emergency fund. Right now, I don't have exactly 12 months, but hey, I'm getting to it. Because again, you look at the job market, you look at the times we're living in, and you need to be prepared. So I'm so happy that I was able to build up a good emergency fund, and I'm still building it because you just don't know what the next day will bring. Reason number 3, I'm happy that my wife forced me to start the budget, is I can invest the extra money that I have. So, I talked about building an emergency fund with the last reason. Here's the thing. When you build an emergency fund, you want to put it in a high yield savings account. A high yield savings account will earn you about 3.5 to 4.0 interest right now. What that means is that you put your money there, you just set it aside, and then you earn money on top of that each month. It's compounding interest. So that's what you do when you have that emergency fund. But most recommendations, I don't really follow these, but most recommendations are 3 to 6 months in the emergency fund. I like 12. But after I got to 6, I said, okay, I do have some extra money now. I'm still going to continue to build up that emergency fund, but this extra money, what can I do with it? That is the money that I use to invest. Now, key thing about investing, DCA. What does DCA mean? Dollar cost average into the stock market. That means that every 2 weeks when you get paid, or maybe once a month, you put a little money into the stock market that you can afford to lose. And it's also important what you choose to invest in. You don't just throw your money willy-nilly into the stock market. If you are trying to be a person who's just trying to live a simple life, and it's not a get-rich-quick scheme or something like this, there are what's called index funds that you can invest in with the stock market. One called VOO is the S&P 500, the top 500 companies in America. You can invest in that. Another one is VEU, which is all the stocks of the world outside of America. So say America's economy crashes. Well, if you have money in VEU, then that crash won't affect you as bad. So there's VOO, there's VEU. There's a lot more that goes into investing. You talk about Roth IRAs, you talk about just investing, talk about the apps that a person can use. But the point is, because I was just forced to budget, I keep hitting that point, because I was forced to budget, I was able to take that extra money and put it in the stock market. Now you say, okay, Richard, why did you explain the high yield savings account and now you're explaining the stock market in the same sense? Because the stock market, when you invest in the stock market and you invest in index funds, let's keep it like that, the S&P 500, over the years since the 1920s, the S&P 500 has had its crashes, but typically you get about 7 to 8% return each year. If it's a good year, you might get 10. What that means is that, how in the high yield savings account, your money builds maybe off of 3 to 4 point interest. Well, within the stock market and index funds, it builds maybe 7 to 10% interest. So you just set it and you forget it. And then not only is that money in case of a real bad emergency, because you don't really want to pull your money out of the stock market immediately. You just want to let it sit there and compound interest. It's also good if a person, lives to the age of retirement. And so there are just things like that. Going back, another point about investing, a lot of people look for side hustles. The thing about investing is that you make money while you sleep most of the time. And yeah, there are downturns, but if you are wise, then those downturns won't hurt you as bad. It won't be like a crash, but it'll be a buying opportunity if the stock market goes down. So that was long-winded. Now, fourth and final reason, it forces me to simplify my life. Now that I am forced to budget, and that resulted in me being debt-free, that resulted in me being able to build an emergency fund, which resulted in me being able to invest, it has now made me really almost like a psychopath when it comes to, do I really need to spend my money on this? No, I'm good. I cook more at home. I buy less things. And I just continue to seek out ways to simplify my life. Because when all of this is rolled up and thought about, everything in totality, what it does is it encapsulates that first reason. That first reason, again, I can focus on life with less stress. When you are budgeting and it allows these other opportunities to open up for you, you begin to live life with far less stress. I go outside. I spend time with my wife more. I hang out with my dogs and my cats, and I'm able to breathe. And if something goes wrong, it's not all hope is lost. And so, really, I am thankful for my wife forcing me to get a budget. And I tell you, it goes along with the three things that I have modeled this channel after. I guess my catchphrase, whatever, is get out of credit card debt, build an emergency fund, and simplify your life. You won't regret doing it. But that's all I got for tonight. Just wanted to tell a little life story there. Take a couple of videos that I had made in the past and just wrap them up into one. But hey, y'all have a good one. I'll talk to you later. And I'll say this too. Like, comment, subscribe, share this with somebody. And hey, down in the comment section, tell me your story about when you started to budget and what resulted from that. Y'all have a good night or a good day. I'll see ya.